I'm standing here at the Rural Computing Center, and I'm in a kind of large open room with a series of worker cubicles, and each cubicle has actually 2 data jacks and one phone jack. And so now here's the phone closet for the Ethernet. The computer essentially can't be more than 300 feet away from this room. So anything further away has to be run to a different phone closet that's closer than 300 feet. And this phone closet is being upgraded, so there's a little bit of a mess, but that's just today while they're doing the upgrade. And so let's see, let's start with the phone system. So this is a punch down block, and it looks a lot like what you saw in the basement of Hyper. And it's a place where the phone wires come from the phone in the cubicle and are punched down. This camera won't really focus in real close, but there's basically pins here that those thin little twisted pair of wires can be punched down on, and then another pair of wires can be linked to them on the same punch down block, and then that second pair of wires is just a short hop to a central point in the building where there's another punch down block that would look just like this but bigger. And then from that punch down block, there's wires that run all the way back to the basement of Hyper where the PBX is located. So there's an intermediate punch down block. And the reason to have punch down blocks is to avoid having to have those wires from the PBX actually run all the way out to each phone. And so in fact, you really just want to run wires from here in the phone closet out to the phone and then link them to other wires that run all the way back to Hyper. Now, this is the old style punch down block. Here's a newer style, which isn't that much different, but it's more protected. The actual punch down posts are less exposed, but the concept is the same. It's a place to link 2 sets of wires together. Now so let's see here. So let's go look at here's the telephone wires coming in from the cubes and then running up into these punch down blocks, and we're putting in some new wiring. The blue wiring is new wiring, but it's the same concept, running down into this punch down block where each wire can be linked to a wire that goes back to the PBX. Now on the data side, here we have a data rack. Keep talking about rack mounted servers. So this is an Ethernet switch. Here's an older switch that we're not using, and it's just mounted in the rack. It's just suspended just by being screwed into the rack. So here's the one that's actually active. We've got something on the order of 160 ports going here, and so each wire here goes into an Ethernet port, goes back to eventually to a particular computer. There's 2 lights for each port. One is on steady. You can see one blinking there, but to the left of that, at least I can see a steady light that tells me there's actually a computer turned on the other end of that, and the blinking light actually indicates traffic on the Ethernet. So this Ethernet switch has, let's go around behind it. It has behind it what we see are redundant power supplies, right? So if one power supply fails, it's still up and running. That's the only thing on the back. So on the front, we have all these cables coming in from particular computers, and then down here, if I can move some cables out of the way gently, this is the uplink port, which is a fiber optic cable with a fiber optic connector. That's the 2 little connectors here, and it's an orange cable. That's the single uplink out of the switch that carries the data for all these 160 Ethernet connections back over a faster link back over the fiber channel. So the data network comes in through the fiber, and it goes out through the switch to through each of these wires, and then if we follow these wires, we'll see that they come down and up, and then they just snap into another, what we call a jack field. Just looks like more phone jacks. And if we look around on the back of that jack field, now we'll see what looks like a punch down block. So this is a place where these twisted pairs leave this punch down block and go back through the wall to each individual cube to the data jack. So each computer comes through its data jack, over its twisted pair, into this punch down block, and then each pair of wires has an equivalent over here, an equivalent place to snap in what you might just call a jumper cable, and then we just jump that Ethernet down into the switch. So it's just a mechanism to go from those thin twisted pairs into a standard Ethernet plug-in cable situation. Now, and that's the old style where we actually punch down the twisted pair. But here's the new style that this phone closet's being upgraded to. The concept's the same. But instead of a punch down block, this wire comes from a data jack in a cube that a computer's connected to, and instead of going to a punch down block, it has a connector that's kind of looks like an oversized telephone. This thing here, this white plastic thing, is just a connector that snaps in. It looks kind of like a phone plug, but it's significantly bigger than a phone plug. And so that plugs directly into the back of this jack field, and then these wires plug into the switch. So it eliminates the punch down block, which is this thing, and instead of having just the bare metal wires punched down on these tiny little pins, which is pretty hard to deal with, each wire instead just terminates into a little snap-in kind of connector. So it's really just changing the way the wires are connected, but logically it's still the same. The campus network comes into the switch, these individual wires come out of the switch, travel through the jack field, then out over each wire, out to each cube, to each computer. So that's what we find in a standard phone closet.